Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatara Satashi Srimati Divine Grace of Vaichan Aravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 3, Chapter 11, Calculation of Time from the Atom, text number 11. Text number 10. Yamas chatvaras chatvaro martyanam ahani ube pakshapanchadasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Yamas Chatvaro Matyanam Ahani Ube Paksha Pancha Dasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Yamas Chatvara Chatvaro Martyanam Ahani Ube Pakshapancha Dasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Yamas Chatvara Chatvaro Chatvaro Janam Hani Ube Pachapanchadasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Panchadasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Mataji Yamas Chatvar Chatvaro Martyanam Ahani Ube Pakshapanchadasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada Yamas Chatvaras Chatvaro Martyanam Ahani Ube Pakshapanchadasahani Shukla Krishnascha Manada. Word for word translation. Yamaha 3 hours. Chatvaraha 4. Chatvaraha and 4. Martyanam of the human beings. Ahani duration of day. Ubhe both day and night. Pakshaha fortnight. Panchadasa, 15. Ahani, days. Shukla, white. Krishna, black. Cha, also. Manada, measured. Translation by His Divine Grace of Vaichanara Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So there's no purport until text 14, so I'll continue reading until the purport. This is translation to text number 10. It is calculated there are 4 praharas, which are also called yamas, in the day and 4 in the night of the human being. Similarly, 15 days and 15 nights are a fortnight, and there are 2 fortnights, black and white, in a month. Text 11. Tayo samochayo masa pitunam tad aharnisham dvautau ritu sad ayanam dakshinam chotaram divi. The aggregate of 2 fortnights is 1 month, and that period is 1 complete day and night for the Pita planets. 2 of such months comprise 1 season, and 6 months comprise 1 complete movement of the sun from south to north. Ayane chahani prahu vatsaro dvasa. This is text 12. Ayane chahani prahu vatsaro dvadasasmita samvatsara satam nirnam param mayur nirupitam. 2 solar movements make 1 day and night of the demigods, and that combination of day and night is 1 complete calendar year for the human being. The human being has a duration of life of 100 years. Text 13. Graharksha tara chakrasta paraman vadina jagad samvatsara vyasanena praryet yanimisho vibhuhu. Translation. Influential stars, planets, luminaries, and atoms all over the universe are rotating in their respective orbits under the direction of the Supreme, represented by eternal Kala. Okay, there's a purport here, but I'll continue to 14. This is purport to text 13. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the sun is the eye of the Supreme, and it rotates in its particular orbit of time. Similarly, beginning from the sun down to the atom, all bodies are under the influence of the Kala Chakra, or the orbit of eternal time, and each of them has a scheduled orbital time of 1 samvatsara. Text 14. Samvatsara parivatsara ida vatsara evacha anuvatsaro vatsarascha viduraivam prabhasyate. There are 5 different names for the orbits of the sun, moon, stars, and luminaries in the firmament, and they each have their own samvatsara. Purport. The subject matters of physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, time and space dealt with in the above verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are certainly very interesting to students of the particular subject, but as far as we are concerned, we cannot explain them very thoroughly in terms of technical knowledge. The subject is summarized by the statement that above all the different branches of knowledge is the supreme control of Kala, the plenary representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nothing exists without him, and therefore everything, however wonderful it may appear to our meager knowledge, is but the work of the magical wand of the Supreme Lord. As far as time is concerned, we beg to subjoin herewith a table of timings in terms of the modern clock. So Prabhupada here is now giving us a summary of the previous verses in relation to our current understanding of time. 1 Truti is, okay, this is going to be hard, is 8 on 13,500 seconds. 1 Veda is 8 on 135 seconds. 1 Lava is 8 45ths of a second. 1 Nimisha is 8 15ths of a second. 1 Shana is 1/8, or rather 8 5ths of a second. 1 Kashta is 8 seconds. 1 Lagu is 2 minutes. 1 Danda is 30 minutes. 1 Prahara is 3 hours. 1 day, 12 hours. 1 night, 12 hours. 1 Paksha, 15 days. 2 Pakshas comprise 1 month, and 12 months comprise 1 calendar year, or 1 full orbit of the sun. A human being expected to live up to 100 years. That is the way of the controlling measure of eternal time. The Brahma Samhita 5th chapter, text 52, affirms this control in this way. Yak chakshuresha savita sakala grahanam raja samasta sura murti rasesha seja yas yajnaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose control even the sun, which is considered to be the eye of the Lord, rotates within the fixed orbit of eternal time. The sun is the king of all planetary systems and has unlimited potency in heat and light. Om Jnanatimurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunminitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we are now coming to the end of this calculation of time from the atom, from the microscopic level, and gradually we'll go to the macroscopic level. So Vidura, in the previous chapter, text 10, in verse 10, he asks about the movements of time. And so Maitreya obliges to Vidura's request and starts discussing about the calculation time, beginning from the atom or the paramanu, the smallest individual measurement. And which mentioned as Bhava Prabhu highlighted yesterday, that andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam, that Krishna, he is present in every atom as the super soul. That atom, paramanu, is the smallest calculation that is made. So that atomic particle, or particle, is, or Krishna entering such a paramanu, the smallest particle, highlights the fact that Krishna possesses all mystic potencies in full, to the extent he becomes the smallest than the smallest, and he can even become bigger than the biggest, in the sense that he is Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and even beyond that he is Mahavishnu, from which all these from all the pores should come the perspiration or the universes. So he's also bigger than the biggest. So this section we're talking about how time is calculated, how the sun travels over a particular space, as mentioned in the second or third verse of this chapter. So we went from all the way from the paramanu, then how it became a combination of 2 to 3, then to 6, and it continues going all the way up to understanding of a lava, a kshana, and all of those periods of time. Now, in this section, we've gone a bit further than just certain sections of time to something that we are more accustomed to using in our day-to-day life. Rather than going from a couple of seconds, we go towards minutes, hours, and then days. So here, we are learning a bit more about how our days are split up into 4 praharas, or 16 praharas. 4 praharas. So 4 praharas in the day and the night. So in other words, there are 3 hours, 1 prahara. So 12 hours our day, 12 hours our night. And how 15 days, 15 days and 15 nights are a fortnight. And there are 2 fortnights, white and black, in a month. So this is our lunar calendar. It's referring to the waxing and waning of the moon. 15 days and 15 nights of a fortnight. Of course, our understanding according to the solar calendar is 14 days is a fortnight, but the Vedic literature specifically focuses on the lunar calendar, and there are 2 fortnights, 1 black and 1 white. And that's how we understand our month. Now, here's an interesting thing. Our understanding Western culture is that there are 4 seasons, but actually according to the Vedic system, there are 6 seasons, because it's mentioned here that the aggregate of 2 fortnights is 1 month. So that period is considered to be a complete day and night for the Pitta planet, those living on the Pitta planet or the ancestors. And 2 of such months comprise one season. So you can understand, those who have some limited understanding of karma kanda or any ritualistic procedure can understand why certain things are done at certain periods of time. They correlate to those particular living entities in the heavenly planets. For example, one performs the Shraddha and all of those particular activities for appeasing the forefathers at a particular point in time, such as the White Fortnight, or a particular time during that 1 month where the Pitta planets have their day and not their night. So there's all those calculations made in the background that help us understand when to perform particular ritualistic functions and when not to do them. Now 2 of such months, that's 4 fortnights, they comprise one season. That's known as a Ritu. Our seasons are summer, autumn, winter, and spring. But according to the Vedic system, and even in India, there's an additional 2 more. So rather than just there's summer, there's autumn, there's spring, then they have the monsoon rainy season, then they have what's a not so cold winter season, and then the very cold winter season. And that's their 6 ritus. Now, it's mentioned in Vrindavan, the forest of Vrindavan. Each of the forests, they display a particular season, and one particular forest displays all of those seasons. So in the spiritual world, the spiritual world is not affected by time. It's just simply a prop. And time brings these seasons according to our understanding in material existence. But in the spiritual world, the seasons change according to the desire of the Supreme Lord and His pastimes. So coming back to our condition in the material world, we understand that 6 months is how the movement is the movement of the sun going from sun of south to north. And it's mentioned that 2 of those months, 6 months, so in other words, our 1 year comprises of the day and night of the demigods. So the demigods are awake 1/2 of our year, and they're asleep the second half of the year. And if I vaguely remember, it's mentioned that Damodar Mas is their morning, their Mangalarti. If I vaguely remember. I have to go back and understand that. But I have to confirm that one. But I remember at least being brought up in some Brahminical culture that there's a particular period of time during the year where no functions are performed, no particular, say for example, marriages and things like that are performed. And I was told it was because of this fact that the demigods are asleep. They're not there to accept your offerings. So some understanding of this time is there in whatever culture, Brahminical culture we have left in society. That combination of day and night is in the complete calendar year for the human being. So the human being has a durational life of 100 years. So time is relative. This is something we can take from this text. Time is relative according to the living entity, according to the sphere of life. Our 100 years is nothing compared to the 100 years of the demigods. So the demigods, their 1 day is our 1 year. So for them, they live for many, many thousands of years. But that's from our perspective. Human years, they live for very long, tens and thousands of years. But for them, it appears just yet another 100 years. Because that's their sphere of life. Time is relative for a particular living entity in a particular section of the universe. For example, Brahma, when Kakudmi, the king, the father of Revati, he was the king of the Anartha province, which is next to Dwarka. And prior to whole Krishna's descent, in one particular yuga, it's mentioned that he wanted to marry his daughter to a very qualified son-in-law, a qualified prince. So he decided that I'll go to Lord Brahma, the topmost planetary system, and I'll ask Lord Brahma who I should marry my daughter to. When Kakudmi entered into Satyaloka, he found Lord Brahma in the middle of a performance. As Brahma is the creator of the universe, he's also absorbed in his sadhana of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So his performances are all in relation to the glorification of the Lord. So then Kakudmi took a seat and waited, not wanting to disturb Lord Brahma. So when the break came, a few moments later, Brahma came and approached Kakudmi and asked him what he would like. And Kakudmi asked him that, my daughter, I'd like her to get married to a qualified son. And Brahma started laughing at him. And Brahma told him that the few moments that you've been spending here, generations upon generations of your family have come and gone. They've disappeared. No one will remember you when you go back. In fact, the people that you thought your sons, the people who you thought could be your son-in-law no longer exist. So many yugas have gone past. So then Kakudmi becomes a bit flustered. What am I to do now? So then Brahma tells him that actually you've come at a very auspicious time. If you go down now, it's Dwapara Yuga in the 28th Manu. Krishna has appeared along with his elder brother Balaram, and you can give your daughter to Balaram. So then he descends from Satyaloka all the way back down to this earthly planetary system and gives his daughter Revati to Balaram. So you can understand for Kakudmi, who also experienced just a few moments on Satyaloka with Brahma, many yugas had gone on planet Earth. So time is relative according to the space we're in. Next is that we understand how all the different luminaries in the universe, they rotate in their respective orbits under the direction of the Supreme, represented by the eternal Chakra. So that's why it's known as a Kala Chakra, a wheel of time. Because if you have a look at the universe, their orbit is being maintained by time. So time it's a wheel of time. In fact, it's mentioned that the sun planet is on a chariot of one wheel, and that one wheel represents time. That one wheel of the sun god, that when he travels throughout the universe, that's the time. There are 5 names for the orbits of the sun, moon, stars, and luminaries in the firmament, and each have their own samvatsara. Samvatsara is the orbit, and it's mentioned that there is the orbit of the sun, orbit of Brihaspati or Jupiter, orbit of the stars, and orbit of the moon. Sun, moon, stars, and luminaries. And they each have 5 different names. So that's also another link to Vedic astrology, understanding of performing proper activities at auspicious times. Again, we see the basis of all of that, how the orbits of the planets there are dictated by time, and how one refers to these orbits and their positions in the universe through astrological calculation and determines a particular auspicious time in the universe. But here Prabhupada mentions something very interesting. Although very humble, Prabhupada brings us back down to the main point of us understanding all of these things. Here Prabhupada is saying that these subject matters of chemistry, physics, mathematics, astronomy, time and space are very interesting to students of that particular study. But as far as we are concerned, we cannot explain them very thoroughly in terms of technical knowledge. The subject is summarized by the statement that above all the different branches of knowledge is the supreme control of Kala, the plenary representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the ultimate statement, there's an interesting way, when you have something written in blogs and posts online, it may be so long that people can't be bothered reading. So then there's an acronym, that TLDR, and at the bottom there'll be a couple of sentences of that. Too lazy, didn't read. And so there's a couple of sentences at the bottom just summarizing what the person wrote in the top. Which is, what's the point of writing it in the first place? No one has time anyway. So again, Prabhupada is bringing us down to us lazy. Manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya he upatritaha. Us unfortunate living entities who don't have much time and are very easily misdirected in our energies. Prabhupada is saying here that this subject can be summarized that everything is under the control of Kala, this plenary representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we'll come to that. I'll just finish this purport. That's a very important point to note for us as devotees, not to speak as devotees, as living entities within the material world. We'll come to that. Nothing exists without Him, and therefore everything however wonderful it may appear in our meager knowledge, is but the work of the magical wand of the Supreme Lord. As far as time is concerned, Prabhupada gives here the table, the Truti, Veda, Lava, Nimesha, Kshana, Kashta, all of these details. It's quite interesting how, like, would you even consider 8/45ths of a second? Would you even consider, that's a lava, would you even consider a kshana, which is 8/5ths of a second? Okay, at least you'd come to a lagu, 2 minutes. That's probably the limit for us to understand. Even that, 2 minutes sometimes. Here's an interesting thing. You know, when you're throughout the day, I was talking about time being relative. We have experience of that throughout the day. You know, the morning just goes like that. And then the evening, you know, they mention classical office work hours, 3:30, 4. It goes very slow. You can count the seconds. That's how slow it goes. So again, it's relative, and it's according to our position in life. So yeah, okay, maybe at that point in time we count 8/5ths of a second to get out of work, get out of school, get back home. But when we're having fun, maybe we consider 2 minutes to 3 hours, those sort of periods of time. Prabhupada then talks about the months and then how the human being is expected to live up to 100 years. Of course, that's not possible in this day and age for every living entity. And this is how time controls us. Time presents to us. In other words, our lifespan is fixed according to our karma in our previous lives. So whatever we're going through now, the lifespan is fixed. Our breaths, they say that the number of breaths we have is fixed. Okay? So our lifetime is fixed, certain amount of years for our particular fulfillment of our desires. So if our lifetime is fixed, so is the amount of happiness and distress we expect in that lifetime. So no matter how much or how hard you endeavor, the superficial nature of your life may change, but the amount of happiness and distress you get, it's fixed because of your previous karma. What you do in this life, specifically in the human form of life, further dictates your next life. How long that period of life is and how much enjoyment and distress you'll experience in that life. So for example, if a human being in this planetary system dedicates themselves to karma kanda activities and rituals, in pious work, then in the next life they get a lifespan which is relatively longer and more sensual pleasures and less distresses. Right? So that's a gross example of how one is able to utilize the time they have to further, in their next life, enjoy material existence and avoid distress. But it's not guaranteed, that's the problem. Our activities in this lifetime, unless we perform karma kanda activities very perfectly, it is not guaranteed our happiness and distress in the next lifetime. So it's a very difficult, very flaky, very uncertain situation we're in. And the way time works is that it serves to us what we deserve at that particular point in time. It may be that, like for example, there's this concern that, you know, the opportunities lost. The opportunities that we may have had, the options that we could have chosen in our lives could have been, are lost. So in other words, we are given a set of choices, we take a particular choice and that takes us down a particular road, a particular path. And the other choices that exist no longer are available for us to choose. So although these options are all there, they're already pre-calculated, everything is already predestined by Krishna. But our choices of what path we want to go down to, that's our free will. But the results are already determined. Now, when Gokuleshwar Prabhu was here, he was mentioning how if you're supposed to die at a particular time, you'll leave your body. But how you leave your body, sometimes that's up to your decisions. For example, in this particular point in time, if you are supposed to, you know, walk out of the... Okay, let's not put us in as an example. Say, for example, a person is meant to leave their body having a car accident in the next couple of hours. Then, at that particular time, time will take away their life. But how time takes away, that is a combination of all the different options and choices the living entity has gone through. So maybe they have the option of dying in this particular way. Maybe they have the option of dying in another particular way. But they're meant to leave their body at that particular point in time. So Gokuleshwar Prabhu was explaining a bit of how free will is mixed into that so-called our understanding of destiny and fate. So we'll come back again to the main point that Krishna is his plenary representation, which is Kala, is the one that controls everything that happens in this material world. This brings us to the verse, very famous verse of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Ayur Harati Vaipumsam, that time is the supreme controller, that the rising and setting of the sun takes away the life of a living entity. It's a very crucial point to understand. The rising and setting of the sun takes away the life of the living entity. So, for example, you may have your birthday today. Prabhupada mentions in one lecture, you may be 50. That 50 is just 50 years taken away by the sun. In other words, you've died 50 years. Already died 50 years. So, Prabhupada's explaining those 50 years you'll never get back. No matter how much money, no matter how much you try. Prabhupada gives the example also in another place. There was one businessman and he was dying. And he was telling his he was telling the doctors that you please just give me, a few more days, a few more years. I just have to finish up my work and then I can leave. I need to take care of my family. And regardless of whatever he could do, of course, if he had to leave, he has to leave. There's nothing he can do to stop it. So Prabhupada is explaining that such is attachment of material existence. That you have a certain period of time to perform your duty, your function of getting out of the material world. But if you develop more and more attachments, at the fag end of life, at the end of one's life, it becomes extremely difficult to practice spiritual activities. It becomes extremely difficult. So, we cannot buy time. Time is a limited resource. And we don't even know how much of this resource we have. And that's another difficult thing. We're not as fortunate as Parikshit Maharaj, who knew, I've got 7 days, that's it, finished, I'm out of here. Right? We don't know when our time will end. And coming back to the point of breaths, it's mentioned in the Hatha Yoga system that by controlling the breath, one is able to extend one's lifespan. By controlling one's breath, one is able to extend one's lifespan. But still, death will come. Therefore, Prabhupada will always chastise, what is the value of our material advancement if it hasn't helped us conquer birth, death, disease, and old age? In fact, our situation is such that even Yudhishthira Maharaj was telling Yamaraj that the most wonderful thing is that despite living entities seeing other living entities die every single day, they still think that they can live forever. So this is the nature of Maya. She makes us forget that time is a limited resource, and she makes us forget that every time the sun sets and rises, we are losing time. We're getting one step closer towards finishing this material body and getting to the next one. It doesn't affect the soul per se, but due to the false ego of the soul, we become affected. Just like when you crash your car, you feel the pain. The car is crashed, but actually you're okay, you're fine. The car is damaged, you're not damaged, but you identified with the car. Right? Oh no, my car. How much more blood that I have to go and spend to get the money to fix this car. You'll feel the pain. But for a person just seeing the car crash, they'll think, oh, the car crashed, they'll continue going. Right? So it's all this false ego that's affecting us. So we have a limited resource, which is time. So praner arte diya vacha shayanam acharanam sada. That Krishna tells his cowherd boys that, one should at least, just like the trees, they're giving very freely to the point that they give their own life for the service of other living entities. So how should we also do? Prana, arte, diya, vacha. That through our life energy, prana, arte, to our wealth or whatever our possessions, arte, diya, our intelligence or mind, thoughts, and vacha, our words. So this time is included there in the form of prana. Our prana is also limited. When the time finishes for this body, the prana leaves the body. The prana finishes, the soul no longer stays in the body, and that's it. Subtle body takes him to the next body. And that we see the example of in the story of Puranjana. Puranjana, the allegorical story given by Narad Muni, Puranjana, the living entity, is situated in the kingdom. And in that kingdom of with 9 gates, it's mentioned that it's guarded by the 5-headed snake, which represents the 5 airs of the body. And the Gandharvas constantly come and attack this kingdom, headed by the Gandharva Chandavega. Okay? So they represent time. There are 360 male soldiers and 360 female soldiers that attack the kingdom of Puranjana. In other words, when you take the allegorical story and apply it to our lives, our body is made of 9 gates, 9 holes, and we are the living entity Puranjana living within the body. And the days and nights are like soldiers continuously attacking our body and causing it to deteriorate, even the prana that's sustaining our soul within this, or sustaining the soul and the body together. So Chandavega and his Gandharva associates constantly attack the body. It's mentioned that he attacks so vigorously that over the period of time, this 5-headed snake is able to manage these 720 soldiers. He's able to manage these, but over a period of time, his strength wanes and wanes and wanes, and he becomes very weak. To the extent that Kalakanya, or Jara, old age, time, and fear, or fear and disease, they're able to enter into the kingdom. They're able to enter because this snake has become very weak, no longer defending the 5 or the 9 holes. So then what happens then? That's when death comes. Slowly the living entity's body becomes to deteriorate by the effect of time. Simply by the effect of time, whatever we have in this material world deteriorates. So in that way, the sun robs the living entity of time, of his duration of life. But Prabhupada says, for the devotee, the sun cannot rob. How is that possible? We see devotees around us, the practitioners of Krishna consciousness. They're also growing old. They're also dying. How is it that the sun is not affecting them? Yes, the sun doesn't affect them because the sun has an effect differently on the devotees. For the non-devotees, time is taken away by age. They become old and they die. Yes, superficially for a devotee, their body undergoes the same old age, birth and death. But they take one more step closer and closer to Krishna. Their activities are dedicated to Krishna activities by hearing and chanting of Krishna Katha. And by doing that, they are guaranteed eternal life. So in that sense, the sun is unable to take away the time from them. Because when the devotee leaves his or her body, they'll continue performing their same function in the next body or in their next spiritual body. So in that way, they're not affected by time. Just like how a cat, and the kitten in the mouth of a cat is unaffected. For them, it's a great source of joy, right? But for the non-devotees, they're like a rat in the mouth of a cat. For them, death comes very swiftly and very painfully. Whatever energy and time they've put into their life, they've tried to amass into material benefits, into happiness and distress, but all that is washed away like sand castles. It's immediately wiped out. Again, they have to start in their next life. In that way, time robs them of their duration of life. Now, for us, how does it work? Because think about it very carefully. We have a limited resource called time, and we have a very rare opportunity, which is called the human form of life. That labdva sudurlabham bahusambhavante. That this human form of life is so rare. And although it's so rare, we somehow or other take it for granted. That we think that, I can just, waste time here, I can spend time there, I can do this, I can do that. The biggest problem is that we have this pride. We have this pride that it's my body, it's my senses, and that I can do whatever I like with them. I know how to get happiness. And this pride is a direct challenge against Krishna. And this is what Krishna will crush, this pride. And how does he crush it? Prahlad Maharaj says, by the inexorable wheel of time. That wheel of time will crush your pride, thinking that you know how to enjoy in this material world, by taking away all the facilities of enjoyment. Because if you have a look, over a period of time, the strength of the senses, they deteriorate. The desire stays the same, but the ability to function and to be able, and the facilities, all gone, deteriorate. You become old person, but you cannot enjoy the body. And that way your pride becomes crushed. But what is it for devotees? Well, for devotees, how do we engage time properly? Rupa Goswami is nicely given in Nectar of Instruction, the first and second verses, how to perform devotional service favorably and unfavorably, and what is unfavorable and should be rejected, and what is favorable and should be accepted. If we just follow these two principles, it's very easy to utilize time properly. And he says that Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati. These 6 things destroy our spiritual life. That over-endeavoring or overeating, endeavoring for mundane things which are difficult to obtain, prajalpo or unnecessary talk or waste of time, niyamagraha, following regulative principles to the following of regulative principles, how does Prabhupada say it? Not following the regulative principles and the over-attachment to it, and janasangas, attachment or association with worldly-minded people, and lolyam, greed for mundane things. If we avoid these 6 things, then it will be very easy for us to utilize our life energy in Krishna's service. And how to do that? Utsaha nischayat dharyat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satovrite sadbir bhaktir prasiddhyati. That by enthusiasm, utsahan, nischayat, determination, utsahan, nischayat, dharyat. I'm forgetting something. Utsahan, enthusiasm, patience and determination, tat karma pravartanat, performing regulative principles, sanga tyaga, that giving up the association of worldly-minded persons, satavrita, and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 things will enable us to properly utilize our time. Now, in the previous verse, we talked about lolyam, that we must give up greed for mundane things. So if you have a look here, Bhavaprabhu was mentioning yesterday, of one of the 6 things, there's also prajalpa. There's a story Prabhupada tells, why waste time in unnecessary gossip? Every moment of your time should be engaged in glorifying and hearing about Krishna. Prayasascha, that's over-endeavor for things that is very difficult to obtain. Why endeavor in the first place? Might as well engage that energy in Krishna's service. Atyahara, overeating and over-accumulating. You're not the proprietor in the first place, and there's only a limited amount you can enjoy anyway. And niyamagraha, that means just follow whatever is given by the spiritual master and the acharya in this Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Janasangas, giving up the association of worldly-minded people. That's why Prabhupada has created ISKCON, so that we take association of devotees. And lolyam, this is a very interesting one. Lolyam, Rupa Goswami mentions in, I think it's in Padyavali, he's mentioning there that Krishna Bhakti Rasabhavitamati Kriyatam Yadikatopi Labhyate Tatra Lolyam Api Mulyam Ekalam Janma Koti Sukrite Na Labhyate. There he's saying that Krishna Bhakti Rasabhavitamati, that whatever this ultimate purpose or the goal of life is Krishna Bhakti Rasabhavitamati. And Prabhupada has translated that into Krishna consciousness. That is the goal of life, to become Krishna conscious. And that is very difficult to obtain, regardless of many thousands and millions of lifetimes of pious activities. You will not be able to get pure love of God, Krishna consciousness. You will not be able to get it. But if at all it is available anywhere, immediately purchase it. Rupa Goswami is saying, if it is at all available anywhere, immediately purchase it. What is the cost? Tatra lolyam api mulyam ekalam. That the only thing you need is greed. You need to develop intense greed for pure love of Godhead. That's all. That's all you need. So this whole lifetime is meant for that, developing pure love of God. And it is our duty to develop that greed in the association of devotees, which is why the 6 favorable principles of devotional service, there is mentioned that Sangat Tyagat, which means to give up those who are not engaged in that endeavor of developing Krishna's loving service, and Sato Vritte, following those who have, following the footsteps of those who have pure love of God. And Prabhupada also mentions here, Utsaha Nishchayat Dharyat, that if one is enthusiastic and one is patient, there is no question of fall down. The first recorded tape of Nectar Devotion, if you hear, Prabhupada says, Utsaha Nishchayat Dharyat. If one is patient and enthusiastic, one will never fall down. In other words, one will not give up Krishna consciousness. One will never be unsuccessful in spiritual life. If you're just simply enthusiastic and patient. Why? Prabhupada says if you're enthusiastic, you'll perform any activity for the pleasure of the Lord. And if you're patient, you will wait because you'll know Krishna will give it whatever I need, Krishna will give at that right time. I'll just be patient and trust Krishna and I'll be enthusiastic in my service. If you simply do these 2 things, then it's very easy to progress in spiritual life. And Prabhupada says if you're unable to have enthusiasm, unable to be patient, then your devotional service will stagnate and gradually it will fade away. So how to maintain these things? In the association of devotees. Constantly absorbing and bathing the mind in Krishna Katha. Katha in the association of devotees. That is the only cure in this day and age. So how to develop this lowliam for Krishna Prem? How to overcome the power of time? And that's very simple. By engaging in Krishna Katha. Recently reading in Isopanishad, Prabhupada translates the verse Srinvatam Sokata Krishna. And he translates it in a very different way, very interesting way. Prabhupada says that one who endeavors to hear about Krishna Katha, they grab Krishna's attention. So one who hears the topics of Krishna Katha or the glories of Krishna, they grab the attention of Krishna. So we should never underestimate how engaging in the 9 processes of devotional service will please Krishna. Simply by hearing, we're grabbing Krishna's attention. We may not understand the subject matter in toto, in full. We may even unable to process it, but if we just simply hear, that pleases Krishna. And Krishna within the heart will reveal what's required for us to understand. Then comes the chanting, remembering, so on and so forth. So hearing and chanting, the core essence. If we just simply engage our lives in molding our lives, because we can't just flick the switch like that, that, from tomorrow, from this moment onwards, I'll be a pure devotee. It's possible for maybe a handful, very rare, but for most of us, probably not. So we need to slowly and gradually mold our life so that we aim for that platform and get there slowly, step by step. That's how we should engage our time. That time, neham vikramana sosti pratyavayano vidyate. There's no loss or diminution in this path, and it will protect one from the greatest type of fear, which is losing this human form of life so that we can continue performing devotional service for the Lord and gradually come to the platform of pure devotional service. So this is the nature of time, and we should never think lightly of it. It's a valuable resource that we'll never get back. So every moment counts, and we should engage all these moments in Krishna's service. Of course, 8/45 of a second is very hard to calculate, so at least we can go for an hour.